Hi everyone. So I know we've been talking a little bit about domain and range, so now we're really going to go into the notation of it. So in here in my notebook, I put domain and range as another topic, and mine is going to start on page 4. Yours may be a little different depending how many notes you've been taking. So let's go ahead and start. And remember, at any time you can just pause this video to fill in your notes or to go back and listen to some information over again. So let's go ahead and start talking about notation. So there's different ways that we can express domain and range. The first one is set notation, and I think you guys have seen this one before. So since we're talking about sets, we're always going to start and end with a curly brace. So in this case, say we're talking about domain, and I have an example of the set of all x such that x is greater than 12. And I'm going to close with a curly brace. So that's set notation. So remember, set notation has curly braces. Our next one, algebraic inequality. This actually comes from our set notation, and we're just going to steal this inside part. So for our algebraic inequality, it's going to be x is greater than 12. So our next one is our interval notation. So our interval notation, it'll help us if we come back to our algebraic inequality. And let's do a number line. So you don't have to do this, just so that you can see what we're talking about. So I have my number 12. I know it's going to be an open circle. And when I say my x values are greater than 12, I'm going to shade in this direction because it's greater than 12. So let's go back to our interval notation. I'm going to write down where we're going to start from and where we're ending. So since this keeps on going forever, it's going to go all the way to infinity. Now remember, infinity isn't an exact number, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so interval notation. I know I'm going to start at 12, and I'm going to go all the way to infinity. And remember when I said infinity is not a set number? So that means it's always going to have a parentheses. Now my 12 was an open circle, so that as well will have a parentheses, and that's interval notation. So let's just say we wanted to say it verbally. Well, there's different ways that we can say it, but I'm just going to go with our domain would be x values that are greater than 12. That are greater than 12. And those are the different ways that we can express domain and range. So let's go ahead and look into this interval notation. So there's two things that I need for interval notation. The first thing are two numbers. So for number 1, I'm going to write down two numbers, and I'm just going to put the little number sign. And I'm going to write down that my two numbers are where I start my graph and where I finish. So this is an F for finish. Okay, and the second thing I need is to know whether it's brackets or if I'm going to use parentheses. Okay. So let's just recap a little bit about what brackets and parentheses means. Sorry about that movement on the camera. Okay, so for brackets, I'm going to be using, these are my brackets, and my parentheses. So if we remember, for brackets, I'm going to use the closed circle. For my parentheses, I'm going to use an open circle. For my brackets, I'm going to be using less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. And my parentheses are for greater than and less than. So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and do an example. So my example is my domain are all the values of x between -8 and 2. So let's start with our number 1. My two numbers, so I start at -8 and I end at 2. Now my second thing I'm going to look at, whether I'm going to use brackets or parentheses. Well, this one is just a regular less than, so that's going to be parentheses with my 2. And this one has an equal sign, so my -8 will have a bracket. So let's go ahead and put all of this together and do one last example. So here I'm going to use notation for my domain and my range. So let me just find my blue and there we go, blue and red. Okay, so remember our blue is for domain, our red is for range. So let's go ahead and start. Remember, for my set notation, I use curly braces. And then I'm gonna use my x because I'm in my domain. So it's my set of all x such that, and remember I'm going to use my generic inequality. So less than x, less than. And I'm going to use my two numbers. Over here, my graph starts at my -2. And if I follow my domain, my graph is covering all the numbers, the values of x, up until 3. So I'm going to go from -2 all the way to 3. And I'm going to end with my brace. So remember, now I need to see whether it's going to be equal to. So over here at this -2, it's an open circle, so that's going to stay like that. Up here with my 3, that's a closed circle, so this will be my less than or equal to. So now from algebraic inequality, I'm just going to copy down what's in here in my set notation. So -2 less than x less than or equal to 3. So for my interval notation, remember my two things that I need. My first is where I start and finish. So I start at -2, I finish at 3. My -2 is open circle, so that's going to be parentheses. My 3 is a closed circle, so that's going to be a bracket. So go ahead and pause and see if you can do the range on your own. And then go ahead and start the video again and we'll see if our answers match up. Okay, so for the range, for our set notation, remember I'm going to start with curly brace. And I'm going to use my y because we're talking about range now. So it's my set of all y such that, and I'm going to use my generic inequality. And then I'm going to, this time, my range is going to start at -4. And it's going to cover all my values of y up until 5. So I'm going to start at -4. I'm going to go all the way up until 5, close my curly brace. So now my -4 is open circle, my 5 is closed circle, so that's going to be equal to. My algebraic notation, I'm going to copy what's inside of my set notation, so -4 less than x, less than or equal to 5. Whoops, my bad. So remember, we're talking about our y's, right? So instead of x, I'm going to put y and y here. So see, that is a mistake that we can make. So we have to be careful with that. Okay, including myself. Alright, so now for interval notation. So again, I look on my graph. I'm going to start at -4. I'm going to go all the way up till 5. -4 is an open circle, so that's parentheses. My 5 is a closed circle, so that's a bracket. And that is how we do domain and range notation. So if you have any questions about any of this, make sure that you let us know.